Okay, 2006 Mazda 6, needed a fuel pump. One day, just tried to start it and it'd turn over, but just spin, but nothing igniting. Watched one of Scotty Kilmer's videos and he gave the 2 ways to test that. And one of the first things, and it turned out, it could either be spark plugs or your fuel pump are 2 of the main things. So he said go as close to the intake as you can and squirt some starter fluid in there, then try to turn it over. And if it turns over a little bit, that means it's your fuel pump's out. And this was the one I chose. I took that right there off because it's close to the full intake for the air. Here's your air filter. I just popped that off. I sprayed some starter fluid. I had to do it twice. Sprayed starter fluid in there once, did it again, and then the car just about started. So I knew I'm not getting any fuel because it will just about start with starter fluid, but otherwise nothing. So I figured it was a fuel pump based on what he said. I disconnected. You need to disconnect your fuse or your battery because you don't want any electricity going to the fuel pump electronics while you're back there with that gas. And that right there, you need to look at your own chart and everything, but that's that little blue 15 ampere is the fuel pump fuse right there. Okay, and I've already got the new fuel pump in. Here's the old fuel pump. And notice there's a spring action. This thing goes up and down. Has a spring action to it. That's the little thing that's going to tell your fuel gauge where you're at on fuel. But especially note that right there. There's a little extra to this lip around here. There's a little thing jutting out a little bit. That's going to be important, as I'll explain in a minute. So that's the old one. I got mine for about I got a new one for maybe 160, 180. I can't remember off. I think Parts Geek came in real quick, a few days. And I have the seat already out, and taking the seat out, I'll show you the seat real quick. The seat, taking out the first time took a few minutes, taking out the second time takes about 30 seconds. It's that easy. There's a couple of clips on the bottom of the seat, right there, under this. So this is the bottom of the seat. Reaching up under there, you'll pull them both the same direction, and it'll release these, and you pop it up, and then the seat just has these things in the back, and it kind of just scoops out from the back seats. And the only thing you have to do is you have to put the seat belts through your holes. As you're pulling it up, you have to feed the seat belts through there. And really I had to take it out a second time because I had a leaking fuel pump, which I'll describe in a minute because I didn't install it right. And the second time I got it out in like 30 seconds. You're going to need one of these tools to take the fuel pump out. I tried the method at first of hammering with a screwdriver, a large screwdriver at an angle on these little lip things in here, and I don't think you'll ever get it out like that. The torque is it's torqued down way too tight, and I knocked a few of them off. These things right here, I knocked a couple off, and then I realized, and now that I know what it took to get it off, I don't think you'll ever get it off tapping it with a screwdriver. You're gonna have to buy one of those tools. So anyway, so there's some other videos on how to get, and it's kind of funny, everybody who does a video on how to get, this is the fuel line, on how to get this fuel line off, they all get stuck and have a huge problem getting it off, but they do eventually get it off. The first time I took it off, it wasn't as bad. The second time I took it off, it took me 20 minutes. And but what I finally had to do is, this pulls up, and I had to pull this one down with like a screwdriver thing, and then pull. And there's a little. Just watch the other videos. You'll see on how to get that off. But it is, don't break anything. But I had to kind of splay that green ring off in both directions the second time to get it to come off. Then this electronics comes out, you squeeze that right there and you pop that electronics out. None of the rest of this has to come out. By the way, there's a shield right there's the shield that went on top of here. There were just 4 screws, took the 4 screws out. That metal shield came off, and then it exposed the fuel pump. You do not need to drop your fuel tank. You can do it all from here. So you take this off, the electronics off. Of course, you have the fuse out or the battery disconnected, and then you have to put that wrench thing that I just showed you. I got it for about $20 off of eBay. I don't know if I just said that. And you have to position it just right on the front of these lips right here. Here, I'll show that real quick. Hey there, son just walked by. Probably thinks I'm crazy in here. This thing will go in to 2 of the ones that are crossing each other. You have to position it just right to where it go on the inside of those lips. Inside of those little things that it can grab on. And I'm not doing my video right. Anyway, you can figure that out. But it sets in there, then you put a ratchet wrench into here and you loosen it, okay? and the whole fuel pump just comes right up out of there, and you're gonna have gas. I would do this on I'd run your gas down if you even have that option. If you got a fuel tank of gas, if you have a full tank of gas, you're gonna have a real mess. It's coming right out and it's gonna puddle up all in here, all around here. That it'll flow out. If it gets high enough, it'll flow out. There's an area, a little channel there that'll flow out through and come out under the car. But if you got a fuel tank, a full fuel tank, you're gonna have a lot of mess in here. Because I did it the second time. I had to go through it because I went and filled up my tank after I replaced this thing, and then it was leaking right out the top of that. Okay, so you have to take the old one out, and then it just pulls right out of there. You take this top ring off, and then the fuel pump just comes right out, and you put your next one right in. But here's the tricks, is that there's 3 rings going on here. There's the bottom ring. There's a bottom plastic ring that you can barely see. Can I show? Sorry about that. See those 2 little plastic things down there? That's a critical thing right there. At that bottom ring, those 2 little plastics. That, you don't see it, but in the black metal down below them, there's actually a little valley for those 2 things to fit in. They have to fit in that, otherwise that bottom ring is going to spin on you. The way to keep the bottom ring from spinning, now yours may have been on there so long you think it's stuck on there, but that bottom ring will start spinning on you. And so it has to be in, those 2 things have to be lined up in that little metal valley, so that the bottom ring, when you're starting to tighten this top ring on, the bottom ring will not spin. And then that bottom ring, after you take your fuel pump out, you'll see it. That bottom ring will have a space in it for that right there. So the little metal valley keeps the bottom ring from spinning as you're tightening your fuel pump on. You're talking in that top ring. Having this in the right position will keep your fuel pump from spinning. While you're trying to tighten that top ring on, this puppy's going to start spinning on you unless this is down in the bottom ring at the right position. And notice there's a spring action on this thing. So you have to put pressure, you have to crush this all the way down in to where that is in that bottom ring. Because if this thing pops up a little bit, it's just going to start spinning on you. And notice there's a little arrow, and there'll be one on your new one too. This will point right towards the front of the car, exactly towards the front, and to get this to line up correctly. For the bottom piece is plastic to be in the little metal groove. That will make its little groove for this right here at about the 10 o'clock position. And when all that's lined up, you'll notice this arrow is pointing right at the front of the car, pointing right out front. So you have to crush this down in there to make this go down and seat inside the groove that's below it. And then you start putting the top ring on that braces the whole thing down. If any of that's messed up, the bottom ring, it's going to start rotating on you. If this isn't lined up and crushed down into that bottom ring to where this is hitting the edge of it, then this thing's going to start rotating on you. I put the first one on, didn't pay attention to all of that, thought I had it tightened down good, and had a whole lake pond of fuel all around the fuel pump. It was actually coming out. I drove out of the driveway and it's like coming out onto the driveway. Fuel, gas. So I had to go in, and that was after I'd gone to, the car started right up, so it was the fuel pump. And I'd gone down and filled it up with gas and came back, and I had a major leak, even though I thought the thing was tightened down. Okay, last thing is, I think the specs is that you need 80 foot-pounds of torque when you torque that thing down. I don't know if anybody ever gets there, and I don't know if that's absolutely needed. That's just the spec. But obviously I had my stuff misaligned, that's why it leaked. But I will say this, I don't think a crescent wrench, when you're loosening it, you can probably loosen it with a crescent wrench. When you're tightening this thing back down, because you're having to hold it with one hand, you might want 2 people. In the end I did. You got to be holding this down in there for those reasons I said. You got to be crushing this so that plastic is up against the plastic on the bottom ring, and the fuel pump won't spin on you. And then with a crescent wrench, you got to tighten this puppy. Well, I don't think you can get that necessarily tight enough with a little 8-inch crescent wrench. So what I did is I had my son with a metal pole setting out that door right there, and he slowly, I got it as tight as I could get it, and then he seated it on down. And all the time he's doing it, I'm having to hold this fuel pump down to make sure. And as soon as you quit, you may even think, it's spinning good, everything's good, but as soon as you quit, and I even did, you see that my bottom pieces down here, those 2 little plastic that I told you about that have to be seated in that little valley, at the very end they rotated out of their valley, but it was fine by that point. The thing was already tight enough. But so you're holding this. Here's what I was doing last night. I'm holding this down with one hand. I'm trying to tighten this with a crescent wrench, and you just can't get enough torque with an 8-inch crescent wrench. I couldn't, and especially when I'm trying to use two hands. So yeah, I've got a little pipe connected to the end of the crescent wrench, and so I've got a few more feet for the foot-pounds of torque. And I didn't tighten it down like super tight, but I've driven this. I filled it up totally full with gas. I've driven it all over, and hit the brakes, make it slosh around, all that kind of stuff, and it is bone dry. And I didn't just crushingly tighten it, but I got it to where my son, with fairly good pressure, teenage boy, out the window there or out the door, was rotating that. So that's it, man. I hope that helps. That's it. You got to have one of these, and that's all there is to it. And when you disconnect this, if your fuel line's full, you may have some fuel come out of that. You just need a bunch of paper towels, and try not to get it on your fabric here. But this may flow out a little bit. It won't flow out much. Mine didn't. And that's about it. Let me back out, think if there's anything else. And then just put that cap back on. That metal, my daughter's getting ready to pull out right behind me. Probably run over my old fuel pump. I can tell you about a 2007 Honda Fit too that I've been having to work on for her. That's it. Hope that helps. But those are the tips. You got to have those things lined up. That plastic, that one in the little metal valley, the other one in the bottom ring, or everything spins on you. You'll never get it seated down. Good luck.